Let's take a look here at some basics of the nervous system. Today, if you have got your book, take a look at Myers Chapter 2, pages 55 to 60. That's where we're kind of looking at today. The nervous system, we're going to talk about different parts of the nervous system, some things that we control, some things that we don't. And then we're also going to take a look at the endocrine system. And the endocrine system is a series of glands throughout your body that essentially control various hormones. And we'll talk about what some of those hormones can do for us. So, a lot of times when people think about the nervous system, they immediately think, oh, that's the brain and the spinal cord. But technically, that's only part of our nervous system. Okay? If you look at this diagram, okay, the nervous system is actually made up of two major parts. We're going to talk about one part being the central nervous system. And essentially, the central nervous system, if you think of everything that basically goes down, like in here, goes straight up and down the middle part of your body. So the brain and the spinal cord. That is the central nervous system. But everything else that goes throughout our entire body basically makes up what we call the peripheral nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system, again, it's going to take messages into the body and take messages out. Okay, so we'll talk about it again here in a minute. Now, the peripheral nervous system is made up of two things, two other parts, the autonomic and the somatic nervous system. We'll talk about those things here in a minute. And you'll notice that the autonomic nervous system is made up of two other parts. It's called the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So when you think about the nervous system in general, it's a lot more complex than a lot of people realize. Let's take a look at each part. Once again, when we talk about the nervous system, most people think of the brain and the spinal cord, but technically that's only one aspect. Okay, and so that is referred to as the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. Secondly, the peripheral nervous system is essentially made up of everything else. Okay, it's all the nerves that are not encased in bone, everything except the brain and the spinal cord, and so forth. So again, we're going to talk later about messages going in and out, which is all part of the peripheral nervous system. Now, we said that that's made up of two other parts. Okay, two other parts of the nervous system. The somatic nervous system. Now, that controls voluntary movements. Okay, voluntary muscle movements. If you're dancing, if you're drinking a Mountain Dew, whatever it is, if you think and you get up and walk across the floor, that's using voluntary muscle movement. Now, again, think of it in terms of the neurons that we talked about in another screencast. Those are using motor neurons, or otherwise known as efferent neurons. And remember, we said efferent neurons. Efferent starts with an E. The word exit starts with an E, so those are messages kind of on the outgoing side. All right? The autonomic nervous system controls, think of autonomic as being almost the same as automatic, because it basically controls the automatic functions of the body. Things that you don't have to think about, okay, digestion, heartbeat, things of that nature. Okay? Now, this autonomic nervous system is also made up of two other parts, two other nervous systems, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system. This basically talks about or goes into action when you need like a lot of energy, when you've got a lot of excitement. If you're in a basketball game or a football game, baseball game, something like that, and you need a lot of energy and you're trying to do everything you can, the sympathetic nervous system takes over. Okay, the same thing with what we call the fight or the flight response. if someone's in danger, if they feel their life's in danger or there's an emergency or anything of this nature. This accelerates the heart rate, the breathing, blood flow goes to the muscles, and basically you get a lot more performance during this time. Now, digestion, everything that goes along with digestion slows down. So that's why, very rarely when you see like a big ball game or something of that nature, you don't see very many people taking a time out to go use the bathroom because it's something that, the body's not focused on at that time period. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system, that's after the fact, okay? That's when the body starts calming down. So, like after a big ball game or after an emergency, sometimes you kind of feel that crash. It's almost like, oh my gosh, you just can't believe how your body just kind of crashes down and everything kind of transfers. Your heart rate and breathing slow down. Your digestion now picks up. So now, you may get pains or urges to go to the restroom, things of that nature. Okay? So all of those aspects are actually included in the nervous system. Now, one other area that we want to look at here real quick is what we call the endocrine system. And the endocrine system, it basically contains, it's made up of glands that secrete hormones. Now, hormones are basically chemicals, okay? That's chemicals. But these things stay in the body. All right, they are transferred via the blood system. So, there are certain types of things that our body emits, like that we refer to as the exocrine system. Things like sweat and tears, things of that nature. That those have no impact on our behavior. But the endocrine system, we found that essentially those things do have an impact. So, let's talk about, first of all, hormones. Okay, hormones are basically chemicals, again, that are secreted generally by a gland. It could be by other cells in the body, but basically it sends a chemical into the blood system, and essentially that chemical goes to other organs throughout the body. Now, let's differentiate between, for example, a hormone and a neurotransmitter. We talked a lot about neurotransmitters going on in the brain and so forth. A neurotransmitter is kind of like the signal on a telephone line. It has a message that goes directly from the sender to the receiver. So when you're on the telephone, you're talking to one other person. Nobody else is necessarily hearing that conversation, okay? Just the person at the other end of the line. Hormones, however, go into the blood system, and they function more like a radio station. So they can basically convey a message or send out a message that any receiver throughout the entire body who happens to be tuned into that station, that radio station, can basically pick up those messages. So hormones have a major impact on a variety of things throughout your entire body. Now, the hormones, we're going to talk about, first of all, the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland it's in the brain. It's attached to the hypothalamus in the brain, and the hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is kind of referred to as the master gland because it controls or has a major influence on all the other glands in the body. So, or at least the huge majority. So, basically, it affects a lot of things. So, the pituitary gland is kind of the master, and it's controlled by the hypothalamus within the brain. Now, on page 59 in your textbook, it talks about a variety of different glands. These are not all, okay? There's a whole host of other glands, but just a few that we'll pick out real quick. For example, the thyroid gland affects metabolism, okay? It affects, for example, how fast or how quick your body transfers food into energy and things of that nature. If something goes wrong with the thyroid gland, it can affect your metabolism, which can cause increases or decreases in weight and things of that nature. The adrenal glands. Okay, the adrenal glands basically produce adrenaline and again provide a lot of energy, kind of it's almost like a rush of energy and strength to people in emergency situations. You know, for example, you hear or you see a story about some accident occurs, and the next thing you know is somebody's able to, you know, somebody you would never think would be capable of doing so might lift up part of a car or a big boulder or something of that nature to allow somebody to escape, you know, that was trapped underneath. That's adrenaline. And when that rush occurs, that's a huge deal. It provides a lot of strength. But then after that adrenaline goes through, that adrenaline rush, then again the body kind of kicks down and everything kind of transforms and it's kind of like you come crashing down. Now, other glands that have a big impact on you, you could think about were the pancreas, okay, that regulates sugar in the blood, things of that nature, but also the uh, the testes and the ovaries. Okay, the testes and the ovaries, those have a big impact on the sexual characteristics that people have, as far as the development of secondary characteristics, pubic hair and breast growth and all of that kind of stuff, the production of sperm in a guy, those kind of things are all controlled in large part by the ovaries or the testes. If you've ever heard the term the gonads, that's basically what we're talking about here. The gonads are the glands that control all of those sexual things, and basically we're talking about the ovaries and the testes. They are the gonads. All right, so in this one we talked about the nervous system, how it's a very complex nervous system, a lot of different parts to it. And then we also talked about the importance of the endocrine system and how hormones can have an impact on your behavior.